The speedometer needle kissed 70 when I decided to cut onto old Route 17, a shortcut promising to shave 2 precious hours off my haul from Bakersfield to Albuquerque. Night had swallowed the landscape hours ago, turning the interstate into a monotony of asphalt glowing under my headlights and the constant drone of my Peterbilt. Exhaustion was a solid weight in my bones, a persistent fog behind my eyes that only the promise of my own bed in Savannah could push back. The radio, tuned to a fading gospel station out of Flagstaff, did little against the oppressive silence that settled with each signal loss. It was in that vacuum of sound, on a stretch where tall, dark pines leaned over the cracked, narrow road, that I saw the first figure. It stood beneath a weathered mile marker, maybe 100 yards ahead, just at the edge of my headlight's reach. Arm extended, thumb up, the classic hitchhiker's pose. But something jammed my thoughts, an instant dissonance that made my foot ease off the gas slightly. The man, it seemed to be a man, wore a faded red and black flannel shirt and light blue jeans, almost baby blue, torn at the right knee. A slouchy straw hat covered part of his face. No backpack, no bag. Just him, planted on the dirt shoulder by tall weeds, still as a post. He made no further gesture, didn't wave. Just stood there, arm out, a static silhouette against the black forest backdrop. A strange chill, unrelated to the air temperature, crawled down my spine. Something about that perfect stillness, that lack of visible expectation, told me not to stop. I flashed my high beams, a warning, an "I see you," but the figure didn't react. Not a muscle moved. I accelerated, passing him at a speed that suddenly felt reckless. In the rearview mirror, he remained standing, shrinking until swallowed by darkness, arms still raised. A deep unease settled in my gut. Just a hitchhiker, Robert, I told myself, trying to calm down. Just some guy on a bad stretch of road. But why that chill on my neck? About 15 minutes later, my heart leapt inside my chest. There he was. Again. This time, further ahead, right after a tight bend that made my knuckles whiten on the wheel. Same position. Same faded red and black flannel. Same light blue jeans torn at the right knee. Same straw hat covering part of his face. Arm extended at that same robotic angle. The distance was shorter now, maybe 70 yards. My headlights caught him fully for a longer fraction of a second. And the sight was worse. The skin under the hat looked abnormally pale, almost gray in the yellow headlight glow. And the posture, it was a perfect replica. Not someone similar. The same man. How in the hell did he get there? I hadn't seen any car pass, no motorcycle, no lights but mine on that deserted road. I'd driven miles since the last spot. It was physically impossible. Fear was a physical presence now, a knot in my throat, cold sweat on my back. I didn't think twice. I stomped the accelerator, the engine roaring in protest, the truck bucking on the old asphalt's uneven surface. I looked frantically at the side mirror. He fell behind, shrinking, but this time, I'd swear the head under the hat turned slightly, tracking my passage. No, impossible. Must be the truck's vibration. Had to be. The next miles were torture. Every curve, every straight, I scanned the shoulder with wide eyes, neck muscles taut as wire. The radio now emitted only a deafening static hiss in the silent cab. I turned it off. The engine's sound became the only heartbeat in the world. My fingers gripped the wheel bone white. 10 minutes. 15. I started breathing a little easier. Maybe it was just a scare, a bizarre coincidence, a trick of fatigue. Maybe I'd imagined the second one being the same man. The road seemed a bit more open, the pines receding slightly. Then, a long straight opened ahead. And there, right in the middle of the straight, spotlighted by my headlights like a stage, was he. Closer. Much closer. 30 yards. Tops. And this time, He wasn't on the shoulder. He had one foot practically on the pavement, right on the edge of the asphalt. Same clothes, same hat, same statue posture, arm extended. But the proximity was terrifying. I could see the details of the flannel, the loose threads from the rip in the jeans. I could see the hanging hands, one with a thumb up, were dirty with dark nails. And the worst, he was facing directly towards me. The straw hat was tilted up slightly, not enough to show the eyes, but enough for me to see the lower part of the face. The lips. They were stretched into a smile. A wide, toothless grin that was nowhere near friendly. It was a contortion of pale skin that spoke of a perverse, unnatural delight. A choked gasp escaped my throat. I didn't think of swerving, of braking. Pure instinct took over. I floored the accelerator like hell was behind me, which, at that moment, felt like a very real possibility. The truck lunged forward, roaring, towards that motionless figure. I squeezed my eyes shut at the last second, bracing for the horrible impact, the thud of flesh and bone against steel. There was no impact. When I opened my eyes, shaking, looking desperately into the mirrors, the road behind was empty. Nothing. No body, no man, no sign. Just dark asphalt receding into the night. A sick, fleeting relief washed over me, followed immediately by a deeper terror. Where was he? What was that? It couldn't have been real. It couldn't. But the image of that grin was burned onto my retinas. I breathed raggedly, my sweaty hands slipping on the wheel. I needed to get a grip. I needed to get off this cursed road. I glanced at the rearview mirror, more out of habit than anything, to check the cargo was secure. And that's when the world stopped. My blood froze in my veins. My lungs refused to work. In the back seat of the cab, sitting with an absurdly normal posture, as if he'd always been there, was he. The same faded red and black flannel. The same light blue jeans torn at the knee. The same straw hat. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking down at his own hands, resting calmly in his lap. Dirty hands. Dark nails. The air inside the cab changed instantly. It grew thick, heavy, carrying a sweet, rotten smell of damp earth and ancient decay. An intense cold emanated from behind, warring with the sweat pouring off me. My reflection in the mirror was a mask of absolute panic, eyes bulging, mouth open in a silent rictus. How did he get in? When? The doors were locked. I'd locked them religiously after the first sighting. And the truck hadn't stopped. Hadn't even slowed down significantly. It was impossible. Everything was impossible. My body trembled uncontrollably. I wanted to look over my shoulder, confirm with my own eyes what the mirror showed, but fear was an icy paralysis at my nape. If I turned, what would I see under that hat? That grin. Nothing. Something far worse. The silence was total now, except for the distant drone of the engine, which seemed to come from another world. He kept looking at his hands, motionless. The figure radiated an unnatural stillness, an infinite, malignant patience. What would you do now? Seriously, think for a second. You there, listening to this story comfortably wherever you are. If you looked in your car mirror right now and saw that entity, that thing, sitting behind you after everything, where would you run? Who would you scream for? The road was black, solitary, no end in sight. The trees were silent witnesses, accomplices. Fear wasn't an emotion anymore. It was the air I breathed, the stuff my bones were made of. He moved. Not suddenly, but with a deliberate, horrifying slowness. The head under the straw hat began to lift. Inch by inch. I shouldn't look. I couldn't see what was under that brim. A trapped, hoarse scream tore at my throat, but no sound came out. My eyes, frantic, jumped from the rear view to the road ahead. And that's when I saw the curve. A sharp bend, marked by a dented sign, to the left. Without thinking, acting on pure, blind survival instinct, I wrenched the wheel hard. The heavy truck responded sluggishly. Tires screeched on asphalt. The world spun. I looked back at the rearview mirror in a fatal impulse. The back seat was empty. The relief was so sudden and overwhelming it nearly made me pass out. A convulsive sob escaped. He was gone. Vanished. Maybe it had been a hallucination, a product of exhaustion and accumulated terror. Maybe. But the sweet, rotten smell still hung in the air, intense, undeniable. And the sensation of cold behind me persisted, like a patch of ice. I kept my eyes fixed on the road, breathing like a cornered animal, my nerves' wires stretched to breaking. I wouldn't look back. Oh, never. I focused only on driving, on getting off this damned road, on reaching the next town, any place with light, with people, with normalcy. The curve was falling behind. The road seemed a bit better ahead. Maybe it was over. That's when I felt it. Didn't see it. Didn't hear it. Felt it. The slight displacement of air. The almost imperceptible dip in the seat cushion behind me. And the smell, that smell of damp grave earth, intensified, filling the cab, suffocating. My heart stopped, then hammered against my ribs like a trapped animal. My whole body froze, except for my eyes, which moved, slow, tortured, towards the rearview mirror. 2 points of pale light, greenish, like pieces of frosted glass embedded in shadow, stared fixedly at me from under the brim of the straw hat. No visible face, just those luminous points suspended in the darkness beneath the hat. And below them, where the mouth should be, the lips parted slowly, stretching once more into that wide, inhuman, toothless grin. A whisper tore through the silence, not coming from any specific direction, but blooming inside my own head, a voice dry as dead leaves dragged over stone, saying my name, Robert, and then the words, "We're going to get there much faster now." The speedometer needle passed 75. The road was a dark tunnel. The pines were black teeth against a starless sky. And those 2 points of green light, cold as the bottom of a well, never left my reflection in the mirror. I don't know where I'm going. I only know I can't stop. Never again. The smell of rotting earth is all I breathe now. He's still there, behind me, smiling, waiting. The first noise came as a metallic tearing sound right after the curve at mile marker 114 on Interstate 80. A noise that made my fingers cement themselves to the steering wheel of my Freightliner like the only anchors in a sea of dark asphalt. Me, Robert, 52 years old with enough road scars across America to know some shipments don't get questioned, especially when they pay 10 times the standard rate and come with instructions typed on yellowed paper. Do not open. Do not stop. Do not look at the internal trailer cameras under any circumstances. Origin: Bakersfield, California. Destination: GPS coordinates near Des Moines, Iowa, not a physical address. Cargo description on the manifest: special materials, inspection exempt. And the smell leaking through the seams of the 48-foot trailer, supposedly airtight, carried the reek of graveyard dirt after acid rain, mixed with old rust and something sickly sweet that churned my stomach. The first 150 miles through California's Central Valley passed in silent tension. I kept my eyes welded to the road, fighting the magnetic pull of the small monitor displaying 4 empty camera feeds from inside the pitch-black trailer. The country station from Fresno playing on the radio felt distant, muffled by the invisible weight of whatever I was hauling. Only after crossing the Truckee River Bridge under a starless Nevada sky did the fuel gauge start betraying me. The needle, which should have been dipping slowly, plummeted like a rock down a well. From a quarter tank to reserve in under 15 miles. Impossible. A freightliner like this didn't drink fuel like that, even hauling granite down the Rockies. Cold sweat, unrelated to the desert night's heat, trickled down my neck. Something was deeply wrong. Then the impacts began. Not the rattle of loose cargo. Deep, methodical thuds, like something massive shifting inside, testing the trailer walls with brutal force. Vibrations traveled up the chassis, through my seat, into my bones. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped thing. I followed the rules. Didn't stop. Didn't look at the camera monitor, though my eyes kept darting toward it like traitors. I stared dead ahead at the yellow lines glowing under my headlights, at the skeletal shapes of Joshua trees lining the highway. Each thud was a needle of panic stabbing my chest. What in God's name had they made me carry? Special materials, folks. Special materials. The GPS was next to lose its mind. The color screen showing a straight shot on I-80 flickered. When it stabilized, it demanded a left turn. Only there was no left turn. Just a steep embankment and scrubland. I ignored it. Stayed the course. Minutes later, its robotic voice insisted, "Turn right in 500 yards." To the right lay nothing but empty desert, fenced with barbed wire. Sweat wasn't just on my neck now, it was a river down my back under my company shirt. The thuds increased, faster, angrier, more insistent. And between them, a new sound emerged. Long, slow, metallic scrapes. Like enormous claws being dragged deliberately across the trailer's steel floor, probing for weakness with sinister patience. The noise drilled into my skull, a physical agony that set my teeth on edge. The fuel consumption was a sick joke. The reserve, good for 50 miles, vanished in 10. The red warning light blinked like a demon's eye on the dash while the needle trembled near empty. Impossible. It defied physics for the truck to still be running, let alone moving, but it groaned forward, straining as if dragging an invisible mountain. Night thickened around me. I-80, usually busy with rigs even at this hour, was deserted. Eerily deserted. No headlights ahead, none approaching. Just me, my groaning freightliner, and that thing in the trailer. The smell of wet earth and sweet decay intensified, filling the cab, mingling with the stink of my own fear. My right hand shook uncontrollably on the gear shift. The urge to glance at the camera monitor chewed at my insides. Just one peek. 1 second. To see if it was a loose steer, a poorly secured bull, anything explainable. But the words on that yellowed paper burned in my mind. Do not look at the internal trailer cameras under any circumstances. Any circumstances. Including now, when the scraping turned into frenzied tearing, followed by an impact so violent it slammed the entire truck sideways, nearly jerking me off the road. I screamed. A raw, animal sound of pure terror. What could cause an impact like that? What kind of special material possessed that kind of strength? That growing weight sucking diesel like a thirsty vampire. The GPS went fully mad. The screen went black for a terrifying heartbeat. When it lit again, it showed not a highway, but a maze of tangled green lines over a black void, forming symbols like ancient, threatening runes that churned my gut just to see. The electronic voice, usually flat, emerged distorted, garbled, drowning in static, recalculating. Route to the void. The void. The word echoed through the cab, cold and final. The scraping stopped dead. The silence that followed was worse than all the noises before it. A silence thick with watchfulness, charged with horrible anticipation. As if that thing back there was listening, judging my next move. The fuel needle had been glued to empty for miles. The engine still roared, but with a supernatural strain, a metallic shriek of agony. How was it possible? What force kept this steel beast moving? Then it happened. A single impact, different from the others. not from the sides or floor of the trailer. It came from the rear doors. One colossal slam, as if something immense had thrown its full fury against them from within. The entire truck shuddered, suspension springs screaming in protest. And then, a new sound. A sound that froze the blood in my veins. Not a scrape, not a thud. A whisper. Viscous, inhuman, impossibly loud, coming not from the trailer, but from inside my own head. Not words I knew, but the intent was clear as broken glass. Bottomless hunger, lethal impatience, an ancient rage deep as an abyss. It was the sound of darkness finding a voice. You feel it right now. Your grip tightens on the phone or mouse. You know it's just a story, but that chill down your spine is real. The fear of the unknown, the unexplainable, whatever waits in the dark. It's easy to judge from your safety, saying I should have opened the trailer, faced the thing. But look around you. Darken your screen for 1 second. See your reflection. What if, for one absolute moment, you saw something moving behind you in the darkness you thought was empty? Would you have the courage you demand of me? Think about that while I tell you the end. The trailer doors held, but the whisper in my mind swelled, becoming a shrill, maddening buzz mixed with that rotting sweet smell that now tasted like metal and bile in my mouth. The GPS showed only a pulsating red screen, like a mechanical heart in agony. The road ahead seemed to distort, the white lines writhing like snakes under the headlights. The Joshua trees at the roadside twisted into impossible black shapes against the void. The Freightliner's engine no longer roared, it howled. A howl of extreme pain, of metal pushed beyond any conceivable limit. And the weight, God, the weight. It felt like the air itself had solidified, crushing the truck against the asphalt. The steering grew heavy, fighting me. Every curve was torture. The engine temperature needle spiked into the red, but I couldn't stop. Stopping broke the prime directive. Stopping meant death. Or something infinitely worse. The red fuel light blinked one last, desperate time, and died. The gauge was dead, empty. But the truck didn't stop. It kept plunging into the deformed night, propelled by a force not its own, dragging a weight that defied physics. The whisper in my mind became a river of dissonant sounds, fleeting images of profound darkness and yellow eyes gleaming in the void. I didn't need to look at the monitor. I knew what was happening back there. Knew the doors, though intact, were no longer a barrier. That the thing was unfolding, growing, spilling out of its steel shell. The smell was unbearable now, a mix of charnel house and ozone, of dead eras and forbidden futures, of something fundamentally wrong. The last thing I saw before the GPS went completely dark, plunging the dash into gloom broken only by the weakening headlights, was the final message flashing in letters the color of clotted blood. Delivery imminent. It wasn't for Des Moines. It never was. It was wherever that thing wanted to go. The truck accelerated on its own, the engine howling at an ear-splitting pitch, hurling itself toward a darkness that wasn't just night, but a physical presence, a living shroud swallowing the highway. The whisper became a triumphant roar inside my skull. The rules weren't broken by me, but by it. I was just the driver, the unwilling ferryman to a destination on no map. My last clear thought, before terror wiped everything away, was that maybe the yellowed paper was wrong. Maybe not looking at the cameras made no difference in the end. Because that thing was certainly looking at me. And now, it was coming to collect its delivery. The weight in the trailer was the universe collapsing onto my shoulders, and the only sound was the dry laughter of darkness winning, as the phantom Freightliner plunged headlong into the void the GPS had craved. The road was gone. Only the fall remained. And the whisper, eternal now, saying I'd been paid well, but the true price was only just coming due. The fuel gauge needle was kissing the red warning light when Flagstaff vanished in the rearview mirror, leaving my Peterbilt and me adrift on Route 66, a dark corridor cutting through the New Mexico desert under a starless sky. Me, Earl, 19 years hauling produce from Phoenix to Albuquerque, knew every inch of that godforsaken stretch, but that night, the world had shrunk. The math was brutal, 5 miles, maybe less, and the engine would die, leaving me alone with the desert silence and the oppressive buzz of nothingness. Then I saw it, a halo of sickly blue neon slicing the darkness to the right, where only scrubland should be. Desert Star Gas, read a crooked sign, its peeling letters reflecting the weak light. Immediate relief, then an icy finger down my spine. That station didn't exist. Never had been there. But the red light was a death sentence. I pulled over. The place was a bubble of unnatural silence. No crickets, no wind-rustling sagebrush, just my dying engine and the unsettling buzz of fluorescent lights. A single man behind the smudged glass of the booth, lit by a single dying bulb. He wore a pristine chevron uniform, bright blue, but starched stiff like a display mannequin. His face under the company cap was too smooth, no lines, no expression, like an unfinished wax mask. As I approached the pump, he emerged, movements fluid yet unervingly precise, like a robot mimicking human gestures. Not a single word. No eye contact. Just a tiny, mechanical nod of his head. He grabbed the nozzle and inserted it into the tank. "Fill her up," I said, my voice too loud in the sound vacuum. He repeated the same robotic nod, never looking at me. His eyes, glimpsed briefly, were dark, deep, but empty, like bottomless pits. The air smelled of scorched rubber and a cloyingly sweet odor of rotten fruit, strong enough to tickle the back of my throat. I paid with cash. He took the bills without touching my fingers, counted them with swift automaton movements, rang them up on an ancient mechanical register that screeched like a dying animal, and returned inside, sitting rigidly on his stool, staring blankly at the opposite wall. No restroom, no other cars, just the pumps, the glass booth, and that man, or whatever it was, a statue of flesh and bone. The tank filled impossibly fast. Back in the cab, I looked at the station in the rear view. The lights flickered, the figure still seated, motionless. I started the engine. It caught with a roar that felt like blasphemy in the silence. I shifted into first, glanced back at the mirror maybe 50 yards down the road. The station was gone. Not faded, not vanished gradually. Simply no longer there. Where it had stood, only empty desert and darkness remained. A jagged chill tore down my spine. I slowed, heart pounding. Nothing. Just the black wall of the desert night. The station had evaporated. Relief turned to ice in my veins. That's when I felt the texture on the steering wheel. Sticky, strange. I looked at my hands. They were smeared with a black liquid, thick as used motor oil, but cold, with an unnatural iridescent sheen in the dashboard light. I remembered holding the nozzle. The fuel. It wasn't diesel. It was something viscous, dark, carrying that sickly sweet stench of decay that now saturated the cab. I checked the dash. The fuel gauge, which should have been full, was swinging wildly, as if the tank held restless shadows. The first warnings came before I'd gone a mile. The dashboard lights began a chaotic dance, blinking in mad patterns. The radio, tuned to a country station out of Gallup, distorted into a high-pitched shriek, then descended into a deep, guttural murmur, words whispered in a language that felt inherently wrong, before falling silent forever. The steering wheel vibrated with an irregular pulse, transmitting the sensation of a sick heartbeat, as if the truck itself were infected. I looked at the fuel gauge again. The needle was plummeting, far faster than physics allowed. The sweet, rotten smell became oppressive, suffocating. But worse than anything was the undeniable, physical sensation in the passenger seat. Empty. visibly empty, yet occupied. A palpable weight in the air, a localized cold that burned like ice against the desert night's lingering warmth, a dense, heavy presence that had settled there. Something sitting, watching. My skin prickled. I tried to rationalize it, fatigue, the scare, but the cold radiating from the empty seat was real, tangible. And the smell worsened, mingling with my own fear. The truck began betraying reality. Accelerating, the engine would suddenly lose power, as if the black fuel were clotting in the lines. The headlights dimmed, shrinking the road ahead to a narrow, menacing tunnel. The dashboard went completely dark for endless seconds, plunging me into total blindness while the truck careened forward in the dark, relighting with a sharp snap, every warning light illuminated like a malevolent grin. And the weight in the passenger seat grew. It became more solid, more attentive. I saw nothing, but knew with visceral certainty that if I turned to look directly, I would see something. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that had arrived with that black liquid. The road snaked ahead, endless. The desert brush taking on twisted, threatening shapes in the gloom. Fear had crystallized into something physical, a metallic taste in my mouth, a pressure on my eardrums. Every curve was a potential cliff edge, every straightaway a trap. The fuel from the non-existent station was consuming my truck, my reason, my sense of safety. The cold from the empty seat was an icy finger touching my soul. Now, think about this. You, sitting there, safe. Take a deep breath. Look at your slightly open bedroom door. Or down your dark hallway. Feel that slight chill? Just the AC, you say. But what if it's not? What if it's the same presence I feel right here, beside me, brought by a station that vanished off the map? Would you trust a lone station in the middle of nowhere, manned by a waxwork figure? Or would you floor it until the tank ran dry and died out here? True terror, friend, isn't the monster you see. It's the one you know is there, sitting beside you in the dark, smiling without a face, while your world crumbles. Keep that chill on your neck. It's real. The final betrayal came on the bridge over Coyote Creek. The brakes simply ceased to exist. I stomped the pedal, but it sank without resistance, like in a nightmare. Nothing. The truck gained speed, a panicked animal running blind. I screamed, the sound raw and choked by panic, wrestling the steering wheel, now heavy and cold, smeared with black. That's when I sensed it, not by sound, but by a shift in the air pressure. The cold from the passenger seat intensified brutally, concentrating, solidifying. And then, a shadow. Not a shape, but an absence of light deeper than the surrounding night, hovering over the empty seat. A patch of vacuum that sucked in the weak dashboard glow. There was no sound, but a sensation of breath. Damp, deep, emanating from that darkness. A sigh of pure, malignant satisfaction. Terror petrified me. In that instant, the steering wheel locked, frozen in my grip. The truck was no longer mine. It obeyed the darkness beside me. It wrenched violently, not following the bridge's curve, but veering towards the broken guardrail on the right, where the black water of the creek snaked below. The sweet smell thickened into a dense, sickly fog. The fuel gauge read empty, but the engine roared with supernatural force. My screams were lost in the shriek of metal tearing through the guardrail, the shattering of glass. My last thought, as the truck tilted towards the abyss and the icy sigh became a glacial breath on my neck, was that the station wasn't an oasis. It was a trap. And the black fuel didn't feed the engine. It fed the presence that now occupied the passenger seat, satisfied, steering us both towards the icy embrace of the creek. The price of relief was my soul. The weight beside me was the only certainty, growing, swallowing everything, as the Peterbilt, my partner on countless roads, became a steel coffin plunging into the watery dark. The last sensation wasn't impact, but invisible, gelid hands closing around my wrists, pulling me down towards it, into water as dark as the cursed fuel.